I think that there's a little bit of a difference there.
Grayson Grundhoefer, Sic'Em365.com recruiting analyst, does the Bearcats with Craig on Tuesdays when they sit in this studio and hammer it out for over an hour every week with taking your questions as well from what you ask on the site. Grayson, what did you see? And I know that they changed the time a little bit, but what about Taekwon last night basically being the star of the moment at the NFL Combine?
Yeah, I mean, wasn't it a surreal moment? I mean, it was just one of those moments where, like, the entire internet just decided to break down for Taekwon Thornton. And honestly, this was something I think that we probably underestimated a little bit, because I remember, I don't know if y'all remember, but when he got to Baylor in, I guess it was 2018, I mean, you saw a guy that was like 150 pounds soaking wet, but everything we heard was this guy was running 4.19. This guy was running super low 40 time. And you kind of thought, okay, well, let me see it. Let me see the proof. And, man, did he put on a show at the Combine. And honestly, it wasn't even just his 40 time. I mean, if you look at his broad jump, his vertical, I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, Grayson, also film-wise, I just said it, he's not someone who's just fast. He really developed this year into a pretty solid route runner.
Yeah, he did. And I think it's one of those things where it just took him time. And the thing of it is, I think people forget that he was actually really good as a true freshman. And, you know, he was pretty good as a sophomore. He just didn't have those moments. And I think a big part of that was quarterback play and the offensive line. But then this year, I mean, he put it all together. It was, I mean, and he had a quarterback that could make those throws deep down the field. And I also think it's one of those things where I think this system and the scheme fit him a lot better. And he was able to just go make plays downfield. And I think we're going to see that more in this Jeff Grimes system.
Grayson, I was just saying, Kalen Barnes, I think he's got some work to do as far as the draft goes. I mean, maybe a late round, definitely a day 3 guy if he gets picked, but perhaps an undrafted free agent just based on, you know, things that I've read and whatnot. But as far as 40 time goes, we know that that's where people are, you know, I saw him tweeting about Taekwon last night and people tweeting at Kalen about, oh, well, you're next. What do you expect him to do in the 40-yard dash?
Yeah, I fully expect him to go sub 4.3. I mean, I think that's the expectation because he was another guy that we heard all these great things about. Now, he had the track times, as did Taekwon coming out of high school. But I think, you know, the 40 time is just a little bit different. And I think there's this expectation that Kalen's going to go out there and drop a 4.3, maybe even lower than that. And really, I think for him, it all comes down to the start because everything I heard in his time at Baylor, he was the fastest 40 time when he got going. The problem is his start was never perfect. So I'm curious if he can hit his start, will he be able to, you know, beat Taekwon's number? I don't know about that, but it'll be really intriguing. I just hope, honestly, guys, that they get these unofficial and official times figured out because last night it was kind of ridiculous. And it was cool because it was Taekwon breaking the all-time record, but for it to be, you know, 0.07 off for him and then Chris Olave was like 0.13 off, like, that's just too much. And I almost feel, I'm not going to say they did on purpose, but I am going to say that it added to the drama, and I could see why they would want to kind of do that. But it's also just super misleading, and it doesn't really create that environment that you want to see when you're being competitive and trying to break an all-time record. So I hope they get that fixed tonight.
One thing that I did learn from somebody who was there, in fact, we just had him on the show, and he'll talk about this, discuss this, I think, at 5. They have somebody new doing the stopwatch, the human stopwatch. And it was Charlie Casserly forever. And he's an old-time football guy and not always the best general manager, but had some pretty good teams in Washington. And that he did that for the longest of times. And that, I guess last night they had somebody different. And that maybe nervous, maybe just kind of getting into a groove, I don't know. But that's kind of one of the things that created such a discrepancy last night as well.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, because it was way off, unlike I think we've ever seen before. Yeah. So I'm sure if it's a new guy, they'll get it corrected for today, I bet.
Grayson, how many, and obviously Baylor has a chance to have 4, 5, 6 guys, 7 maybe drafted and or in training camps, free agents, whatever. How much does that help? You hear about, you know, quarterback or wide receiver U or DBU, whatever. How much can Baylor use what they're seeing at the Combine and help them with what they want for the next level of players coming in?
You know, I think it's a lot. And honestly, thank the Lord, whoever was doing the stopwatch, because that Tyquan Thornton run got so much publicity. I mean, you saw a ton of, guys who were committed, guys on the team, recruits saw that. I mean, for a guy to go out and run a 4.21 on the biggest stage, and then, just he's at the combine, he's putting on a show, and I just think that is a big deal. And I will say there are some concerns that I've heard from some wide receiver prospects about, Baylor's system and whatnot, because it wasn't, air raid and high flying, and there weren't multiple 1,000-yard receivers and everything like that. But I think that people have a misconception. Like, this is not the Georgia Tech offense, the triple option. This is just a power downhill style that creates opportunities down the field through play action. And Tyquan had a phenomenal season, and that offense only helped Tyquan's draft stock. So I think that's definitely something that they can sell for the future recruits. And then obviously the other guys who are going to get drafted, I mean, I don't think Dave Aranda needs many more draft picks to kind of prove what he can do. But I will say it's nice to have him at Baylor, right? Because it shows, he can do it at both places. And Jalen Petrie getting drafted in the second round, maybe he even sneaks into the first round, which would be tremendous for the football program. But even if he goes in the second round, you're going to have Terrell Bernard, JT Woods. Those guys get drafted. Maybe Kalen Barnes turns some heads tonight and someone decides to take a shot on him. And that can only help things. And as we know, based on the roster, they have a lot more draft picks going forward. So, yeah, I think it definitely helps, and it's something that Baylor's going to advertise and sell, and also say, hey, man, Dave Aranda did this with a bunch of guys that weren't even his recruits. Imagine when he gets an opportunity to really develop these guys even more. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a selling point.
Yeah, Grayson, I think especially when he starts putting some linemen in there, it might change the perception a lot as well, because that's something they just haven't gotten a chance to do, but that's coming in 2023.
Right, and it's kind of funny you said that, because they have, I don't know if they have 4 NFL draft picks, but I think they definitely have 2 with Connor Galvin and Khalil Keith, and maybe Jacob Gall and Grant Miller sneak in there as well. But you're right, they all decide to come back, so we won't know till next year. But hey, maybe Xavier Newman-Johnson gets his name called in a late round. That would be really cool.
Grayson, your thoughts on the big week for Baylor men's basketball? I mean, going all the way back to Oklahoma State, and then game day Saturday, went over Kansas, turning around big Monday, went over Texas, and now setting themselves up for one final regular season game and an opportunity to at least share a Big 12 championship. It's been quite the run.
Yeah, it has. And I mean, it's just been full of memories, right? I mean, it all started that game in Stillwater. James Akinjo's bucket late. Obviously, Adam Flagler was terrific. I mean, it just was phenomenal in that game, and he has been phenomenal in the back half of the season since he's gotten fully healthy. And yeah, things have turned, and they showed out and just showed this grit and toughness that I know John Jacobs talked to you all about. Just they want to be known for grit as well as joy, and I think these wins over Kansas and Texas really prove that. And now they got to go out and play a team that honestly is going to try to scuffle things up. They're going to try to make Baylor play a low-scoring game, try to make it a defensive battle, and Baylor's got to combat that. And, Baylor does have pressure on them for sure, but I would also say Kansas has a lot of pressure on them as well as they take on Texas, the team they lost to early in the season. And my biggest thing is hopefully Baylor is not score-watching by the end of their game. Those TVs need to be off. Just go out, take care of business, and try to win a Big 12 championship, clinch at least a share of it. And I anticipate that they're going to do that. I think they're the better team, and what Scott Drew has done has been phenomenal. Now, I know people are talking about him being in the top 3 in Coach of the Year voting, and I agree with that, but I think there's definitely a case for him to be the Coach of the Year. And I think that we've seen it, right? We've seen it day to day, the injuries that they've had to deal with, and the rotations that they had to adjust to, and just everything. Their entire team changed again, kind of like it did with Tristan Clark, except even to another level, because it's just been injury after injury. And so I hope he gets the credit he deserves. Even if it's not Coach of the Year, he should definitely be Big 12 Coach of the Year. He should just get a lot of recognition, because this is one of the better coaching jobs he's ever done.
Well, for most of the year, and deservedly so, most of that has been focused on Mark Adams and Iowa State's coach. And then, of course, nationally with Ed Cooley, Tommy Lloyd at Arizona with what they've done, but I have seen a lot more discussion with his name, and it doesn't mean that someone's forgetting about Mark Adams. I know fan bases can get a little bit, wait a minute. It means somebody else is pretty damn good, too, at what they've done, especially late in the year when it's more fresh on the mind. And so we'll see what happens this weekend if they can finish it off as well. Grayson, thank you. Appreciate your time. Enjoy the weekend, and always great to have you on to discuss most of the time recruiting, but today a lot of other nuggets.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Grayson Grundhoefer.